What's the bar tip bearing do? What's the sprocket do? What's the bearing do? You can see here with the chain on this saw that as it moves, the tie straps and the cutters touch the bar. When they get out here, they're suspended from the bar, a small amount. I can stick this little screwdriver in here. See, there's a gap there. That's a sign that the bar tip is worn if your chain starts to rub. Okay, I think I got the final rivet. Okay, I'm out in my garage shop, enjoying my favorite work sweatshirt. I'm in the comfort of my Camel City Mill socks. I'm going to discuss the most underrated, underappreciated part of a chainsaw, the bar tip bearings. Sprocket tip bar bearing, bar tip sprocket bearings, bar sprocket tip bearings, bearing tip bar sprocket bearings. I live out in the country and I have use for chainsaws often, so I like my chainsaws. What do you think most often gets ignored, underappreciated, and disregarded? My wife's practically a librarian. She likes me to use these big words. Now, some bar tips have a hole for greasing and some don't. Why? Why is that? Which is better? What's the point? Some have a hole for greasing, some don't. Some are replaceable by these rivets, and some are not replaceable. Depends on the bar. This happens to be a pretty good quality aftermarket bar that has this replaceable tip, and it's pretty nice. Works well. When the part becomes deteriorated, it's held in disdain. It's evaded, lapsed. This is an older saw that I've had pretty good use out of. You can see right here is the oil pump, the port where the oil comes out for the bar. So when the saw is running, oil comes out of this port. It doesn't matter if it's idling or if it's pulling chain, there's still oil coming out. I'll demonstrate this by starting the saw, and I'll just let it run. Don't ask what kind of bar oil I use. You probably don't want to hear it. Got the rim sprocket conversion here, which I recommend. Normally I have a bar mounted to the saw so oil doesn't drip all over the place, but that gives you the idea. Now, I know this is elementary, but hang with me. Now, time for a little experiment. I like experiments. I like to play with my saws. We start the saw, no chain, bar attached, saw running, oil coming out of the saw. What could happen? Let's see. I turn this back and forth, you see some shininess in that hole. Something's moving behind there in that hole. Now that's the same hole. See, there's oil spurting out of that hole. That's the same hole. That's the same hole that you're advised to use for greasing these bearings. So that leads me to believe that if you run oil down the bar onto the sprocket, that it can work its way into those bearings. To test whether these results were a fluke, I bought a cheap Oregon brand bar with a single rivet bearing and sprocket, kind of a homeowner grade laminated bar. I also bought a Chinese knockoff of an Oregon replacement chainsaw tip, 3/8 with a 5 rivet bearing. I'm going to take those apart and see what's inside. I kind of know what's inside, but I never thought about it a whole lot before this project, and I haven't really seen very many pictures online of these things taken completely apart. I've seen videos of people replacing them on the bar, but not necessarily the guts of the inside. These babies just don't get any respect. These babies tend to just run and run. We don't think about them. I never even thought about what was in there. Single rivet. I'm not sure how many teeth are on the sprocket. It's kind of a small nose. Replaceable bar tip for an Oregon 5 rivet bearing setup. Looks like some of this needs to be drilled out, and looks like some little dimples for maybe spot welds that have to be drilled out. I'm not sure yet, but I'm going to tear into it. See you in a minute. Once we took a little paint off of this baby, you can see little spot welds here. We're gonna drill those out. It looks like it's in 2 pieces, spot welded together, and it has little guides here, little bosses that protrude from one side and stick through a hole on the other side to keep this aligned during the welding process. We'll take these out and see what we've got inside. It's kind of a muddy, misty day. Those Camel City Mill socks sure feel good on a day like today. Kind of misty and raining, cloudy, overcast. Okay, I think I got the final rivet sticking out down here. This part is unfettered, unregarded, unheralded, unacclaimed, uncommemorated, and unrecognized. It's unhonored, unlauded, unlooked at, unrenowned, unrevered, unpraised, untrumpeted, unapplauded, unadmired. Now, I can finally answer what's actually inside these things. All right, you can see when we take the top plate off that under here, there's a plate on top, a spacer here. It's the same width of this sprocket. And then there are 5 rivets These 5 rivets hold this little round centerpiece in place. Now I can't flip it over, I'm afraid these bearings will fall out. But as you rotate it, these bearings go with it. Oops. I'll try to hold this steady and pull on it. See? It's kind of like little ball bearings, but they're sort of rollers, needle bearings, but they're very small, little biscuit-shaped needle bearings sandwiched in between these 2 layers of metal. So this is loaded with grease at the factory. But I'm not sure in use how long that grease lasts if you don't replenish it. Now, we saw before, as we put this on there, that little hole was where you apply grease. That little hole comes out right here, right at these bearings. But we also noticed on my other saw, all we did was apply oil to this bar tip. And so I'll use my screwdriver. You know, when these are together, this forms a channel for the oil. The oil comes down through here, and it can dribble down in here. And as this is spinning, of course, the chain touches these teeth and gets oil on them, and then it kind of through the capillary action of the oil, it kind of wets these surfaces here between the gear teeth. And then, since this is only a flat plate with a little bit of clearance in between, that oil can work its way through this surface to the bearings. And same on the other side of this gear. As this swipes across, see, this is wet with grease. And if oil is coming in here, it'll also be wet with oil. So that's how it wicks its way in here, lubricates these bearings. I'm showing this here with the chain installed. Now this is a low pro chain, it's not a regular 3/8, but you get the picture. One thing to note is that the teeth, the drive links, one thing to note is the drive links don't go to the bottom of the rail. There's a space between the bottom of the drive link and the bottom of the rail. So oil can sit down in here and travel. I know that the chain drags it along and takes it to the sprocket, but it can also get down in here. Now there's also sawdust and small chunks of wood and fine particles of dust and dirt that get in here also. As this is turning, it works all that in too. Unvenerated and unamoured, unmourned, unreverenced, uncultivated. All right, so we got our saw set up again this time with the Oregon bar, the kind of cheap bar with the cheap little bearings at the end. Small saw. This time I'm going to stick a little piece of chain in here just for fun. I'm going to show you something. I'm hoping what will happen is this will run, it'll pump the oil will go under the chain and come out here and start dripping out. That's my plan. What I did?
It's recording now.
Yeah. All right, right, that was a strange little experiment, but what I wanted to show there was that while the saw is running, oil is pumped under the chain in the bar groove. So even if the chain isn't moving, that oil can get all the way under the chain and get down to the bar tip, to the bearings. So when the saw is idling, that bar groove is filling up with oil. Then when the next time you move the chain, it takes a burst of oil toward the bar tip, toward the bearings. So there's a good chance that if your oiler is working correctly, the bar tip's getting plenty of oil. Okay, I'm gonna hack a little section out of this bar just to show you something else real quick. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so here's another small demonstration. Here's a little putty knife that I'm gonna stick in the bar groove and run it down. And you can see I've kind of hacked out a little section of the bar that's pretty much down toward the bottom of that bar groove. And you can see that the chain, as it rides in there, there's space underneath here. You know, as the top of the rails wear a little bit and you dress them with a file, you know, or sanding stone or whatever to conduct your maintenance, keep everything level, you will wear off a little bit of the bar. And so there's a little bit, you know, of extra underneath here, which can fill with oil. Sometimes it fills with a combination of oil and sawdust, chain oil and small sawdust and dirt. So it's good to clean that out occasionally so that you can have a good channel for the oil. Unacknowledged, left totally to its own devices. The little part of this chainsaw, this little part of an average chainsaw, is unworshipped and unacclaimed. I'm going to take the paint off the surface, do what I did on that other bar tip, and get in here and look at these bearings on this cheaper style bar. All right, I've ground some paint off this thing. I can tell that there's a weld right here and a weld right here. I'm just going to cut this thing across here, get these two welds off, and then take that rivet off to get to this sprocket. This little part of the average chainsaw is unworshipped and unacclaimed. It's noteless, unaddressed, and uncalendared. It's overlooked and unnoteworthy, unshrined and unmemorialized, just plain unhailed. What are we talking about? The bar tip bearings. I got the little Oregon homeowner bar torn apart, bar tip. Yeah, you can see there's a single rivet in the center that takes all the force from the chain. The other one has 5 rivets, so that's a little stronger. This one, the homeowner grade smaller bar, has smaller bearings, smaller sprocket, smaller everything. The nose is very short radius compared to the other one. So that's the difference. You know, that's what you pay for with a bigger pro level saw. You know, more durability, longevity. Some of these bigger saws are made to run professionally all day, and this little thing is made to run every so often. And for most people, it's good enough, but it's not quite as robust. Also notice that earlier I did a test where I had this thing all together on the bar, and I ran oil down through here. You'll notice it's really wet right now with oil, and it's wet on the surface of this, the inner surface of this gear, between the gear and this outer plate. The plate is wet too. I don't know if you can see the shine on the plate, but it's wet with oil too. So that goes along with my theory that oil can wick its way in there to those bearings on most of these bars. Some may claim to be sealed, but I haven't seen that yet on these. Here's a shot of a bunch of bar tips that I got used. Some are used. I don't think some have ever been used, but they're old. I got them all in a bunch. In order to break stuff and see what's inside, I'm going to choose this one. It's got 6 rivets. It's obviously burned up. It's got a lot of heat marks here on it. It's got a big gouge in it. It's totally worn out. You can't even see the teeth of the sprocket here. So it's seen better days. I'll go ahead and tear into that one, rip it apart, and see what's inside there. I'm starting to see a pattern with these. These are all old vintage parts. Maybe some of today's saws are a little different, but I'm not sure. This little part often goes unheated. It gets omitted and unnoticed completely. Unappreciated, undervalued, not given the proper care. All right, next up is our old bar tip. I have no idea what this is supposed to fit. It's just labeled 3/8. I don't know if it's an old Windsor or what kind of brand it is, but I wire brushed some of the old dirt and grime off of it, and it was obviously burned up. It's been way too hot, and it's just overheated. Everything went well until I took the last rivet out, one of these last rivets, and the thing kind of exploded. So I'll put it back together the way it was when I took it apart, so you can see how the parts go together. This one had a spacer in here that fits here, and you know, this goes on top like that. It had 2 little thin shims, and I don't know what the purpose of these is really. I don't know if they're a harder material or if they're supposed to be kind of a shroud around the bearings, but that goes in there. And then the sprocket barely fits that. Then this center ring goes in, and it's a thicker material. It's as thick as this other material, as thick as the gear, as thick as the sprocket. And then these little bitty bearings go in here, and I apologize, they kind of blew apart when I was taking it apart. And then there's a little shim that goes on top. It's very thin, but it covers the bearings. So this looks to me to be sort of a seal. It looks like they're trying to seal grease into those bearings with these little shims, because there is no, I don't think there is a grease hole anywhere on either side of this. So it either relied on the grease or the oil coming from the bar. Either way, it obviously didn't get enough, because there are signs that it was severely overheated. I ground some of those surfaces off, but you could tell they were kind of blued, like they'd been really hot. So evidently they had an oiling problem with their bar, or that's about all I can see that would have destroyed this so badly. But anyway, that's the design. It's got 6 rivets that hold it together. Pretty solid centerpiece. Actually kind of minuscule bearings for such a size gear as that. I was surprised the bearings themselves were so small. But anyway, that's another design that's pretty similar to that first one. Reading forums online recently about this topic, I heard one person say there are 3 ideas about how this works. And it made a lot of sense to me. This guy said there are basically 3 types of saw users. One type of user continually puts grease in here on the bar tip regularly. And so this grease stays pliable and kind of loose the way this fresh grease is in this bar tip. Another type of user occasionally greases. They put grease in and then they wait a long time before they grease again. That type of user tends to have trouble with bar tips. The reason is they pump grease in here. The grease gets old and crusty and kind of gooey and almost solid, kind of like clay. Then it kind of seals up around the sprocket here, and the oil that comes in from the chain lube can't make its way to the bearings. So those people tend to have more trouble with these bearings. The other group of people never grease and rely on the bar oil to get in there and oil the bearings. That's the way I operate. I'm not as judicious with my maintenance putting grease in here. Grease, I think, is good. It'll work if you stay on top of it. If you let it dry up and get caked with sawdust and become kind of like glue in here, it can actually hurt your lubrication. So I prefer to just use the thin bar oil that can work its way in here and keep these continually wet. This little workhorse part is often omitted and unheeded. It's sad that this part is underappreciated. It's unappreciated, undervalued, underestimated, unsung, underrecognized, shunned and scorned, dismissed and disdained. This little part of a chainsaw is often spurned, unwanted, abandoned, affronted. All right, another note about bars. My old Sugihara bar here has a replaceable nose tip with a grease hole. This bar, this steel bar, came off a more modern 500i fuel-injected big saw, 79cc Pro saw. This has a removable bar tip, replaceable bar tip, with no oil port. There is no oil port on this saw. There's no oil port here. Now, have they found some way to totally seal this bearing and keep the grease in? I'm skeptical. Have they decided that maybe that hole allows as much dirt into the bearings as it does grease for the average user? I'm kind of that opinion, that they've decided that most people get by just fine with the bar oil lubricating these bearings. And by keeping that hole closed, it keeps out the grit, it keeps out the sawdust and the dirt, and it keeps fresh oil coming from the tank down the rail to the bearings. I should probably clog the hole on mine because I never grease. I would probably be better off to have that hole closed, but it's been doing pretty well. So I don't know exactly what the total picture is there, but either one seemed to work pretty well as long as you keep oil or grease on them.